Alright, you got this, Chris. Just explain to them why you're building a jet ski. It's all simple. Woo! Okay, is it recording? Yeah. What's up, guys? New day, new episode, and I got a completely different video for you. As you can tell by the thumbnail and the title of this episode, we are going to be building a jet ski, and it's not electric. No. Now, before you just X this out, hear me out for 2 seconds. I did start this channel with the electric things in mind because I wanted to show how fast the industry is evolving and how much power these electric vehicles are starting to produce, especially on the dirt bikes. But there's certain applications where the electric things just aren't there yet, like for jet skis, for example, and like competitive race ATVs like this thing right here. This is my full-blown race quad. It's a Honda TRX 450. This bad boy runs on VP MS 109. It's like rubbing alcohol. But I know more about gas engines and making power out of gas motors than I do with the electric stuff. Not saying I don't know a lot about the electric stuff, but I do know a lot more about the gas stuff. So I figured let's branch this channel off a little bit and we'll do some gas, do some electric, because I want to keep making content for you. So this episode is a filler video. I don't want you to think that I gave up on the electric dirt bike. By no means. It's sitting right there. The garage is a mess because I'm not making a video in the garage right now. I'm still waiting for parts for the electric pit bike. They're gonna be here real soon. I kind of prematurely made the episode of when I was talking about getting the QS motors from Electro & Company. I made that video way too soon. That's why it's taking so long for me to get the parts to make the dirt bike. It has nothing to do with Electro Company themselves. They're working probably faster than I could ever imagine. I appreciate it so much. They're not a bad, slow company. It's just that I made the video too premature to when they even had all the stuff ready to ship out. So that's all we're waiting for the electric dirt bike. So we're going to get right back to that when I get the pieces. But in the meantime, we're going to make a jet ski. And I don't know what else to say. Just sit back and relax and let me know what you think, alright? Give the video a thumbs up and subscribe. Let's get to the video. So here we have my Kawasaki Ultra 250X. This is a 2008. It's a supercharged jet ski. And I got it around mid-season last year, and it's been nothing but problems. But that is expected with these Kawasaki Ultras. So before we dive into this whole one-day build, let me give you a little crash course on buying secondhand jet skis and the ones to stay away from. I'm just going to give you some examples, but Kawasaki Ultras have a lot of problems. So I'll show you them. This way, if you own one of these or you know someone that owns one of these, show them this video, and this way they can get nicely educated on how bad these jet skis are. But they could be good at the same time. It's just a challenge, and it's a challenge that I wanted to accept and try to conquer. But stay away from Kawasaki's. Let me show you some other ones. I try to run clear from two strokes, especially if they have the word Polaris in them. These things are turds. It's hard to find parts. They went out of business. Stay away from these. Now, like some good skis, for example, a GTI, like this bad boy, the Sea-Doo. These are great skis. Some of these run for a long time. They're pretty good. So secondhand, getting one of these, you'll be good. Yamaha XLT 1200, stay away from these things. The carbs are on the bottom of the motor. You're going to have to do the carbs every single year. They're expensive. It's hard to do. So just steer clear from these. Yamaha FXs, these are good. They could be good. They could also be problematic, but for the most part, they're good. I would recommend one of these if you're buying them secondhand. Another big thing about buying skis secondhand is if you live on the salt water, this is where the skis mostly die, is because of salt and corrosion. So if you could find a ski on a lake or freshwater, you'd be starting off with a better platform than buying one that was on salt water all its life. But that really comes down to how the person maintained it before you've owned it, because there are clean saltwater skis. Don't buy a ski without being able to test drive it or run it. I mean, if you're buying a ski sight unseen and you don't know if it runs or not, that's a huge risk, and you're probably going to end up dumping a fortune into the machine. So just stay away from those. Test drive your ski before you buy it, and stay away from like 2-strokes because they're getting old. But back to this Kawasaki. What are some of the flaws with these things? Well, let me just show you what I have going on with mine. So that's currently what my motor looks like. As you can tell, it's missing a lot of pieces. And that's because the head on mine cracked. Which brings us to our first problem with Kawasaki Ultras. So problem number one that you run into with these Kawasaki Ultras. In the early years of the Kawasaki Ultra, so the Kawasaki Ultra 250s and 260s, they're the ones that normally have this problem. You're going to want to look out for some things. If you ever go to check your oil, if you ever notice it slightly milky, like there's kind of looks like a milkshake, that means you have water going into your motor. And that was a common problem with these Kawasaki Ultras. So on the original heads, there's a casting flaw. And I'll kind of show you what the flaw is. You see these water ports? There's those two, and these two. You see how close they are together? And they're super close to the bolt where the head studs are going to come through. What happens is they actually crack. So they bridge together and they crack. And then a spider crack goes down there, and a spider crack goes down here, and then a spider crack goes into this where the bolt goes through. So it's all like hairline cracks. You barely even see it, but what ends up happening is the water from the water jacket ends up working its way into the top side of the head, which starts to mix with the oil, and it creates a milkshake. So the way to fix this is you got to take your cylinder head off the Jetski, get rid of it, go out and buy the 300 cylinder heads, which is a direct bolt-on to the 250 motors, because Kawasaki uses the same blocks on all their jet skis. But what they did with these is they got rid of these two water jackets. They got rid of them. So it eliminates that problem. This is a better casted head. It'll get rid of the milky water situation that a lot of people have with the Kawasaki Ultras. But that's one of the things that failed on me with my personal Kawasaki Ultra. So basically what I'm doing in this episode is going to replace the head. We're going to put the 300 head on here. I also have a full graphics kit for the ski. So we're going to fully graphic it and make it look like a race ski. I have a lot of performance parts on this thing, and I'll show you as the video progresses. But one other quick thing about the heads, this does not happen to every single Ultra 250 or 260. It happens to some of them. Some are hits or some misses. But mainly, if you have one of these running and it's not mixing the oil, and you just leave it stock and you keep running it, more than likely it will last a while. But the problem comes when you start tampering with things. Like for me, I didn't leave the motor stock. I got the ski, and the first thing I started doing was throwing on performance parts on it, and I think that caused the extra stress, which ended up creating the crack on the head. Doing the motor itself, I'm going to take the bottom end out of the hull because there's no reason to do it in the hull. It's actually harder. I was just in such a rush and couldn't believe that the head actually cracked, so I just tore down into it and ripped the head out in the hull. But to put it back together, we're going to take the motor out of the hull. So let's get the bottom end outside and get to showing you some of the performance parts I have done on this thing. Alright, so now that we got the bottom end out of the ski, before we put the new head on here, let me show you the mods that I've done to the ski last year that led up to the cylinder head cracking. So first thing first I did a cold air intake. There's the filter. It sits all the way in the front of the ski. You get rid of the stock air box. It allows more air to flow through the ski. At the same time of doing that, I did the Riva through hull exhaust. This does nothing other than makes a little more noise. So we did intake exhaust. Now, other bolt-on parts that I've done to this ski was I have an R&D ride plate. I have Riva's intake grate all the way up in the front over there. I did a wedge to give the ski more pitch. And I also added the Riva sponsons on the sides, which these are like having basically skis on the side of your ski, which causes the jet ski to handle like it's on rails. This more affects the handling, not performance. So after doing all those pieces, which is like equivalent to like a stage 1 for the Kawasaki Ultra, I still wanted more power. So I started messing with this stuff. So here's Kawasaki's root style supercharger. This is how they create boosts for these motors. They use a root style, and it basically has a drive belt that runs off the crank, and it just drives the supercharger pulley, which drives the charger itself. Sucks in air from the bottom, it spits it out the top, goes into the intercooler, into your intake manifold, creating boost for your motor, making your motor run faster and more power. So one of the easiest mods that gives you probably the best gains in performance is to change the size of the pulley on the supercharger itself. So here is the stock pulley that they come with. It's actually way bigger than the one that I have on there now. What I ended up going with was R&D's 1-to-1 pulley kit. So I have their full R&D stage 2, I guess is considered, system on my ski. I have their 1-to-1 pulley. I also got rid of the stock belt tensioner, which goes over here and tensions the belt for the supercharger pulley. I went with a Kawi Performance automatic tensioner. That was a huge upgrade. It makes a big difference on these skis. If you have one of these, try to find this. It saves you from spitting out belts all the time. Another thing I'm going to have to change is, you see this dampener on the pulley. I'm missing one of the rubbers. I have a new one. This was one of the big upgrades that I did to the ski before the head cracked, is I did the 1-to-1 pulley, started boosting more pressure. But since these motors, it's like a chain reaction. When you do one thing on these motors, like change the pulley, you have to change everything else around it to compensate for the added horsepower you're starting to make. So let me show you some stuff on the ski fast. When I did the R&D 1-to-1 pulley, I also went with the R&D rising rate regulator. I have a high pressure fuel pump in the tank. I'm able to control the pressure with the external regulator, and I did a return line for the fuel system. So there's no internal regulator in the tank. It's bypassed, it's going through the fuel rail, dumping right back in the tank, and I'm regulating it outside the tank. I also have their big pink injectors, so you get more fuel. And I have a R&D power shot. So that's the full R&D system. There's not too many other bolt-on parts you could buy for these Ultras. I pretty much have everything in this ski except for maybe doing a turbo or something. So this is part of the reason why I'm going to consider it as a race ski, because it has a full R&D system. The thing is pretty much as fast as you can get one of these Ultras and still keep it semi-reliable. Let's get to putting the 300 head on this motor now. One other quick thing is I got ARP head bolts. We're not putting the stock head bolts back on it. We are putting ARP KP Racing's head bolts for the added boost to give us our best chance of having this motor survive a long time. So let's get to putting this together. Alright, so now that everything is all put together, I think I got the timing right, but what I'm going to do is hook up a jumper pack to the starter and just turn the motor over so we know if we have any interference problems, like if the pistons hit the valves. If that happens, catastrophic, but it's something you want to know now before you put it in the hull. So let's just go for it, see what happens. Oh, it's building oil pressure. Wow, I think it's good. It's got no oil in it, so it's sucking the oil pump dry. That's what that throbbing noise is, but there is oil coming out on the cam, so I think everything is perfect. I think it's ready to just finish dressing this up, and let's sling it back in the hull and start putting everything together around it so we can have this thing up and running real soon. Let's get to putting this in the hull. So I'm gonna say we're about 98% done. I still got some like little loose ends I gotta tighten up. But for the most part, everything is in here, everything's together. I think it's time to dry crank it a little bit just to get more oil going. I've topped off the oil level. And then we should be ready to start. Hopefully this thing runs because it is getting a little late. I don't know if we're gonna be able to do the graphics in this episode. But, I mean, if this thing starts and runs, that would be a huge plus. Maybe I'll make an episode 2 after this episode of the graphics kit. If you want to see what some of the graphics look like, I mean, here's just an idea. Like, I'm a big 000 guy. That was my race number when I used to race ATVs. But it's going to be like something like this. Just all decked out and race graphics. So that might be in the next episode for this build. We'll do a episode 2. But for the moment of truth, let's see if the thing actually runs. Let's get you set up over here. So I'm just going to dry crank it at first with the coils out. This way we can build oil pressure and not damage anything. Here's your immobilizer. I have no fuel, so it's beeping low fuel, but we'll just quiet it. Let's do some cranks. Everything sounds good. We got about 43 psi of fuel pressure. Let's throw the coils in and see if it fires. Oh man, I really hope this thing works. Please work, please work. All right, here we go. Moment of truth. So, with that, it's alive. But like I said, it's around 98% done. I still got loose ends to tighten up, and I got the whole tuning process to do all over again. Because you got to tune these kind of things. Oh man, it runs. I got to hook up my Y-band. This is my O2 sensor. Check the air-fuel ratio, but guys, it runs. I've been cranking on this thing for like, I don't even know, all day. This has been a long day. It's dark outside. So, I hope you enjoyed what you just watched. I know it's different than the electric stuff, but this is a ski that I have, and I'll probably make more videos in the future of it. So, give the video a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, share this with anybody you know that enjoys jet skiing, and I mean, let's grow this channel, people. I'll see you on the next one, alright? Peace.